Okay, sorry, that works a bit better, doesn't it, when you turn your microphone on? Sorry, folks. Okay, I'll try all that again. Okay, so my name's Wayne Brown. As you can see, I'm a consummate professional. Some of you may know me, most of you probably don't. What I want to do is, this is the first episode of my show, so I want to make it a relatively quick introductory thing. And I'll give a little bit of a history as to how I came to be here and also what the show is going to be about. And about 3.5 years ago, I was introduced to, been nearly 4 years ago now, I was introduced to Mr. Malloy by a mutual friend, and we discussed doing a show on relationships, and we consequently started doing that show. And we did 60 odd 1 hour episodes. So 60 hours of content just about relationships and dating, conflict resolution, things like that. And then I took a bit of a break and I came back and I was doing my music show. And then I talked with Aaron about doing an expanded version of the relationship show, which is what this show is about. And the subject matter that I'll be discussing during these shows could be dating, it could be parenting, could be conflict resolutions, emotions, masculinity, femininity, all sorts of things. So there'll basically be 2 shows in the one. So 1 week I'll do a one-on-you show, as in I'll be talking to yourself and whoever else is watching. And during those shows, I'll have a subject that I'll be talking about. And also, the comments will be obviously live, so that if you wanted to ask a question, you wanted me to elaborate on something, I'd happily do that. So those shows will be very much interactive, and I'm hoping they'll be interactive. And the other weeks, I will be inviting someone on the show with me, and they could be a coach, they could be a therapist, they could be a professional, someone with letters after their name. And they also might be someone like yourself, someone who's gotten past a particular problem, you've learned a way to get past it. And therefore, I'd love to have you on the show and to find out, what you've got, because I've learned a lot, but I certainly don't know everything. So I'm open to learning from other people. And also I'm hoping that the people that I get on and myself will deliver information that'll help people live better lives, have better relationships, more effective conflict resolution, all of these sorts of things. And the format, at least initially, will be a half-hour live stream, which would be very much like this, where you get to interact and ask questions. Even if I've got a guest, you can comment or whatever. And then what I will do is I'll stop the live stream and I will then keep recording the show. And then if you enjoy the half hour, you can go to the Edge Radio Australia YouTube channel and then you can watch the rest of it. So it might be another half hour, it could be another hour, it could be another 2 hours. It depends on how well it's flowing and how deep we're getting into it and basically how much we're enjoying it, because we have to enjoy this as much as you do. So like I said, tonight's show was more of an introductory thing. I've got some notes here to go through, and during the course of the show over the coming weeks, I'll obviously talk about my journey and more of what's happened to me and how I got to be where I am and where I was, etc. Because it's amazing how often once you start talking about something, you get past that embarrassment and all of that, you find out how much other people have been through similar things, and then suddenly you can have these great conversations. So for myself, I've been on this journey for a long time, and one of the things that really mattered to me and made a big difference was finding my authentic self. And that's what I wanted to explore a little bit in this next 20 odd minutes. So I, like a lot of people, I grew up with a certain culture, a certain educational standard, a certain family environment, peer groups, exposure to media, things like that. And these things shaped who I became. Now, I don't know about yourself. I don't know what your journey is. I only know what mine is. And when I talk to people, learning what theirs is. So a good example of this is I'm obviously a male, and one of the things that we are often taught growing up as males is you can't show your emotions because it's a weakness. You can't cry. You can't do any of these sorts of things. So I myself grew up with that belief of you don't cry, you don't show your emotions, it's a weakness and all of this sort of thing. And it was only years later that I realized that didn't align with who I was. It wasn't authentic. It didn't feel congruent. It didn't sit well with me. So one of the things that I did is I started to work on my emotions. And one of my first big steps forward for that was I had a lady that I knew. Her husband was about to go and do a men's workshop weekend. And she said to me, you'd probably benefit from this. So I thought, you know what? I trust you. I've got a good feeling about this. So I booked in and went and did it. And it's a thing called MKP, or the Mankind Project. So it's been going for 20 odd years, probably 30 years now. And you go on this weekend retreat, and you go through, I think it's something like 150 different processes. And one of the processes allowed me to open up and expose some of these emotions that I'd been suppressing and ignoring and pushing down. And I found it very cathartic. It was something that released a lot within me. And afterwards, I was quite sort of drained, but elated that I was able to allow these emotions to come out. And it was a while later that I started to dig deeper into it. And I created a couple of tools that allowed me to get in touch with my emotions. Now, that was because I felt that suppressing my emotions wasn't something that was authentic with who I was. It wasn't congruent. And what I found was, over the years, I've done a lot of work on getting in touch with my emotions, is it's allowed me to sit more comfortably with things because I can understand how I'm feeling. I can get the message that my emotions are trying to give me. And a good example is this. And this is one of those things that you look back at retrospectively. So for me, many years ago, my father had organised a job for me. He worked for Telstra, or back then it was Telecom, and it was installing the transmission lines out in the middle of the bush. And so he'd lined this up for me and said, if you go with this, it'll set you up financially, et cetera, et cetera. And a chap that I knew that I worked with, he wanted to go over east, and we're based in Perth, it's where I'm from, and he wanted someone who knew how to run the business to come with him to run it for him while he was over there. So he asked me to do it because he knew that I knew how to do it. And so I was torn between this adventure that this guy had offered me and my loyalty to my father. And at the time, it was something that really tore me apart. I remember I was off with friends down south, and I walked off to be by myself and just cried because I was just like, I don't know what to do. And ultimately, I had to understand that I couldn't please my father because I had to do what felt right for me, and that was to go over east. And that was one of those things that now I can look back at and dissect and break it down because I understand my emotions, because I wanted to bring out that authentic part of me. So all of us have this authenticity hidden underneath. And that's the thing. A lot of people, when they're on their journey of self-discovery or self-improvement or whatever you want to call it, they believe they have this attitude of, I have to become something, I have to improve, I have to change and develop and manipulate myself. And that's not actually true. Ultimately, we are already whole, we're complete, we're already perfect the way we are. what we need to do is remove the things that have been put on us, the programming, the beliefs that aren't ours, the attitudes, etc. And these are the things that once we remove them, finding ourselves is so much easier. So, like I said, that belief I had that men don't cry, they don't show the weakness, etc., that was something I had to remove. So once I removed it, it was very easy to get in touch with my emotions, or a lot easier than it would have been had I not approached that thing. Now, I know I have had a couple of people come in and out, which is really cool. I like the fact that I'm getting interactions here. Don't usually get it on a first show, so I'm very pleased about that. If you do want to put a comment up, feel free to chuck it in there. If you've got any questions, if you've got anything you want me to elaborate on or explain, feel free to be one of the first to join in with my show. Now, the genesis of the name is, just to sort of go off on a tangent here because I can, the reason I chose this name is initially I wanted to give it like a really serious professional name. And I realized that having done the previous show and having done the music show, one of the things about myself that I like to bring is if I make a mistake and I stuff up like I did at the start of the show when I forgot to turn my microphone on, is I like to let people know it's okay to make mistakes, because a lot of the time, and I certainly did in my past, we make a mistake and we beat ourselves up like it's something, there's something wrong with us and we're stupid or less than or unworthy because we made a mistake. I want people to understand that it's okay to make mistakes. So I decided in the end I didn't really want to do a professional sounding name for the show, hence the Talkie Show. It's a silly name, but the content we're doing is very serious. And of course, we want to be having fun while we're exploring it. So while I'm doing this, I'm hoping you get something out of it. I'm hoping people put comments up that allow me to maybe learn something or look at things differently. In fact, here's a little story for you that's popped into my head. When I was at high school, one of the things I struggled with was algebra. I don't know about you, but algebra was one that did my head in. I could do trig and all the other stuff, but algebra, couldn't understand it. A equals 2 doesn't make sense. I had many teachers try to explain to me how to do algebra, and I just couldn't get my head around it. And it was only once I was in my 20s that someone explained it to me in language that I understood that I went, got it now. And now, of course, algebra is easy. So a lot of the times when we're trying to learn something, it needs to be presented to us in a multiple of ways, so that, you know, some people need to do things, some people need to hear it, some people need to experience it. So even if you put a comment up, it might be something that I go, I've never looked at it that way. So even I'm learning. So together we can all sort of become better at what we do and enjoy our lives more. I've got my notes here, like I said. Okay, I think I've talked about some of all that. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the other shows. So when I have these guests that I've invited on the show, what I do is I send them a list of questions. Now, the idea of the questions are to give us a starting point and a theme. So it could be like tonight, it's about authenticity and alignment. It's about finding your real self. So that's what I'm sort of talking about tonight. And when I have a guest, it'll be the same thing. They will pick a theme or a question that resonates with them, and then they'll come and talk about that, and we'll explore it, and I'll ask them questions to go deeper, and basically we'll see where it goes. But with the authenticity thing, just to go into a little more depth, and I will be going into this more in other shows, because for me, I feel it's something really important. There's so many things that we have about our culture, beliefs we have regarding our genders. You know, men have to be this way, women have to be this way. And these sorts of attitudes and beliefs tend to lock us in and stifle who we are, rather than allowing our expression, our freedom, our ability to find who we really are. So, like, schooling is a brilliant one, because it teaches us that you can't make mistakes. You know, we sit for exams and you're taught how many you get right, and there's only right answers. Wrong ones don't count. And in real life, making a mistake is how you learn. You sit there, you make a mistake, you learn a way not to do it, and then you try something else, and you might make multiple mistakes, and eventually you'll get it right, and then you'll go on and obviously have a better result. A perfect example, Thomas Edison with the invention of the incandescent light bulb. Someone once asked him how it felt to fail 10,000 times, because apparently he had 10,000 attempts at inventing it. And he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 9,999 ways it didn't work. And it's like that with a lot of what we do in life. We try it and it works for us, or it doesn't work for us. We either get our result or we don't. So we try a tool or we don't. Another analogy that I use in regards to getting results, and this has helped me immensely deal with people. So this could be one for you to ponder. Many years ago, I needed to chop down a tree, and it was only a relatively small tree, only about the size of my forearm. And I went into my shed, and the only tool I had was a hammer. I didn't have any axes. I didn't have any saws. I didn't have tomahawks. I didn't have a chainsaw. None of that. None of the effective tools. All I had was a crappy tool. So I went out and I used that crappy tool to chop down the tree. Now, needless to say, it took me a lot longer than it should have done. It was a lot messier than it should have been, and it took a lot more energy than it should have done. Now, did I get the result? Yes, I got the result. However, it wasn't the best of tools. Now, what I realized about my own journey and the journey of other people is we're only doing the best we can with the tools we have. Now, at the time, I only had a hammer. Now I have the chainsaw, I have the axe, I have the tomahawk. I've got all of the tools, so that regardless of what sort of tree it is, I can get the result that I want. And it's like that with everything we do. So if you're not getting a good result with what you're trying to achieve in your life, look at your tools. Ask yourself, is it a good tool? Is this the tool I need to access my emotions, to find my authenticity, to become congruent with who I genuinely am? These sorts of things allow us to go out and get better results. So these are all the sort of things that I've learned and the sort of things that I want to explore during this show. If you're watching and you're enjoying what I'm talking about at the moment, chuck up a comment, say hi or something, just so I know the comments work. So that'd be really cool. Now, during the show, obviously you can chuck up a comment and ask questions. Now, you may ask, how do I ask a question if the show's not on? I've created an email address especially for this show, so that if you have a question, a feedback, something you want me to explore deeper, whatever it is, the email address is the talkie@gmail.com. So Talkie as in Talkie, and that's all in one word, talkie@gmail.com. So that way, if you suddenly think of something, you can send an email straight away rather than waiting for the show and trying to remember what the question was. So these sorts of things will allow you to interact, to find out things, because the one thing I've realized is there's no such thing as stupid questions. So you may be sitting there thinking, I don't want to ask this question about relationships or parenting or conflict resolution because it's a stupid question. The one thing I've found almost universally is the moment you ask that question that you felt was a stupid question, 3, 4, 10 people will go, thank God you asked. I was too embarrassed to ask and I really needed to know that. So a lot of the time, we're asking the question that other people need to hear. So if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, chuck it up there. Feel free. I'd love to see it. Be brilliant to know how you feel about things. If you've found your authenticity, how you deal with your emotions, or whatever other subject we come up with during the shows. I've just about gone through my notes already. It's amazing how quickly you can go through notes. Okay, so how do we get realigned? Now, like I said, my journey was I realized many years ago about the fact that I was misaligned with various things. Another good example, drag my poor dad into this. And I know I'm beating him up a little bit. However, he has been one of my best learning contacts, for want of a better word. So many years ago, my father said to me, learn a trade for your job because, you'll always find it work. You'll always earn pretty good money. It's always nice and stable. And in that regard, he was absolutely correct. The problem was it wasn't who I authentically was. Now, of course, I wanted to have respect for my father. I wanted to be loyal to him. I wanted to agree with him. I didn't want to upset him. All of these sorts of things that drive who we are and keep us misaligned. I went with that. Now, he was right. I've always been able to walk in and an hour later be offered a job. I've always earned pretty good money and managed to survive and save enough and all of those sorts of things. However, I wanted to do something more creative, hence me heading down the path of coach, etc. Now, to his credit, a number of years ago, I was playing golf with my dad. We were walking along and out of the blue, he suddenly said to me, you know what? I should have put you into graphic arts years ago like you wanted to do. And that was beautiful that he acknowledged that he didn't allow me to be authentic. He didn't let me follow the path that was true to me. So that was really nice. And so you will find that 95% or more of people are not doing the job that they authentically want to do. For many years, I've had a question that I like to ask people of. If you could be guaranteed the skills, the abilities, the qualifications you needed to do a job, you didn't need to worry about money, what job would you do? I think I've only ever had one person say the job that they were currently doing. Just about everyone else said something completely different to what they were doing. So if you want to start on your journey tonight, and you can take tonight as a catalyst to get started to find out who you are, this is how you do it. You start asking yourself good questions like, what matters to me? What has value to me? What brings out my worth? What feels congruent with who I am? What is it that I would get up in the morning and be excited to go and do? What is it that I would struggle to go home at night from doing because, I need to go and eat and sleep? I'd rather do what my job is. So questions like that allow you to find out who you are so that you can become more of who you already are. So moving those things off. Here's another lesson I got from my dad. Many years ago, my first wife, and yes, I have been married before, we'll call them learning experiences, not a marriage. So when my first marriage ended, I was visiting my dad and my youngest boy did something naughty and I gave him a bit of a clip on the butt. And it wasn't enough to hurt him, but it was enough to startle him. And it was a reflex reaction by myself. And my father, who normally keeps things to himself, he doesn't speak up. He turned to me and said, what are you taking it out on him for? And it was weird because it didn't really hit me until I got home and I'd put the boys to bed, that I was like, damn, he's right. And that was one of those things that really stopped me in my tracks and allowed me to find out more about who I am. So it started getting me to tap into why I got angry, what triggered me, what I could learn from it, how I could deal with it better, how I could make sense of it, how I could get the people that I care about to benefit from these things. So being able to ask yourself questions, to be open to what people say, those sorts of things allow you to become more of who you are. So always be open to the things that help you become more, the things that will help you take off the crap. There's so many things that we're taught with media. Social media is a terrible one for it, where we watch someone's reel and we think that's how we need to be. We need to be that version of success or that version of happy. And that may not apply to us. Like there's a lot of people saying you need to be wealthy. And for some people, yeah, they might like money, but that might not be their highest value. Their highest value might be connection or communication, and therefore they'll put that ahead of money. So finding out what's important to you, what matters to you, that's the thing that will change your life far more than just about anything else you'll do. Because if you're following someone else's path, you won't end up your version of happy, because you'll be chasing their career recommendations, their version of a relationship, their style of parenting, their level of money or abundance or whatever it is. You need to find out what's important to you. So alignment is very important in that regard. Really good example is many years ago, I was doing a group session in Sydney, and I asked if anyone wanted to do a one-day workshop with me, and this lady said she did. And during the one-day session, I had a flip chart there, the whiteboard with the big bits of paper, and I asked her what's important to her for a relationship, and she told me a list of things, and I went, okay, and I flipped the page over and we did a few processes, and then I asked her again in a very specific way what was important to her in a relationship, and we listed these things. And I asked her, do you feel that these are authentic? Do you feel that they're congruent? Do these feel like the sort of thing that would make a quality relationship for you? And she said, yes, very much so. And then I flipped back to the previous page and said to her, so what do you think about these now? And she was amazed that they were literally 180 degrees from what she actually wanted. So once we'd removed her layers that were keeping her off track, then she was able to find what was congruent for her, what was true for her. So a lot of the times we don't even know what it is that's pulled us offline. We don't even know that we're offline a lot of the time. A lot of people, they have the old midlife crisis, and they suddenly realize one day when they wake up, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I was striving for. This isn't what matters to me. So once you find out what matters, what matters to you, then it's so much easier to achieve that. Like relationships, for example, if you don't know what are the important values for you in a relationship, how do you know you've got them? And a really good example is many years ago when I was trying to work out who's the right partner for me, I sat down and did a lot of work on figuring this out and worked out what was important to me. So when I was meeting ladies, I would check that if they tick these little values off. And the woman that eventually became my wife, who I'm married to now, she ticked off a lot of these boxes. And luckily for me, there was a couple that she ticked off that I didn't realize were so important. And here's a little quick lesson for you before we end tonight's super quick show. 2 values you definitely want to have in a relationship. 1, they have to be interested in self-growth. They have to be a better version this year than who they were last year. Because if you aren't improving, if you aren't becoming a better version of yourself, you're either going to hold yourself back or you're going to hold your partner back. So if you're both interested in becoming a better version of yourself, becoming a better version of your couple is so much easier. And the other thing is you want to make sure you're with someone who can own their own mistakes, their own stuff ups, because if you've got someone who has that maturity to go, yep, I screwed up, I apologize, let's get on with it, then you can have a better relationship. So if you're currently single, looking for a partner, make sure you're looking for those 2, that they're interested in self-growth or at least improving, and they can own their mistakes. So there you go. That's tonight's show. I wanted to keep it nice and quick. For those of you that tuned in, whether you stayed for the whole thing or whether you didn't, doesn't matter. Thank you for listening in. I'll catch you next week. I've got my first guest, Jo. She's coming in. We've got a few different subjects we're going to look at. So I shall catch you next week. All right. Look after yourselves. And